Just a little video. I've got Shikigami no Shiro 2 running on a NAOMI system on my Blast City cabinet. Couple reasons why I'm making this video. What you see here, this is a Sega JAMMA I/O board. USB from the NAOMI comes in here, and it connects to a JAMMA harness. The JAMMA harness, if it has power, will power this. Otherwise, you need to use one of the other connectors to give it power. I had been running it in my Blast City, and it interfaces the controls with your NAOMI. The thing is, I only have one of these. And also, this one, my cabinet only has one coin counter because it only has one coin slot. Shikigami no Shiro is one of the games, one of the very few games that you have to have 2 coin meters hooked up for it to load for some reason. Just for some reason I wanted, I gotta play it, and I can't do it with that, so it was bugging me. So I ended up getting a couple of these. This is a JVS I/O board. This 60-pin connector is the digital outputs for your buttons. This connector is analog for things like the analog joysticks, and Zombies Revenge or Monkey Ball. They will hook up to that. Same USB from your NAOMI goes into it. This one needs external power because it doesn't have a JAMMA harness. So this is 5 volts in. 5 volts is the yellow, white is the ground. There's also 12 volts in, which you don't need to run it. I just found out. There's 5 volts out, so there's 5 volts in and out, 12 volts in and out down here. Basically, I wanted to try Shikigami no Shiro, and I needed to spoof the second coin meter. If you look online, there's information about it. What I've done is I've taken the digital output, which if you look for the pinout online, you can find it. Andy Geezer at AGS has it on his website. If you go through pin 50 with a wire and then put a 100 ohm resistor to a 5 volt line, it will spoof the coin meter. It'll think there's a coin counter in there, even though there isn't. So my Blast City has one coin counter, so that's pin 49. So for the second one, I put a 100 ohm resistor in line with 5 volts. This other wire here is a loop that I found online that sometimes these JVS I/O boards don't work unless they have a 5 volt line that comes from pin 1 of the 60-pin harness and then loops back to pin 3. So I think that's kind of like maybe like a PC power supply where you have to jumper a couple lines if you want it to turn on, simulating pressing the power switch on a PC. So I just decided that wire was already there, I'd leave it there. So I've got all this wired up to a fingerboard. Just a plain old vanilla JAMMA fingerboard that then goes into the JAMMA harness in my cabinet. My cabinet does not have a 001 loom, which provides JVS inputs and power. I made an earlier video where I show my NAOMI where I have, turn the light on here, where I've made my own power wires. Set them up here, which is where they come if you have a 001 loom, but I didn't, so I just went ahead and ordered the pins for this and the connectors for these from DigiKey. Actually, the pins on this side I think I already have, if I remember right. The other ones I ordered from DigiKey, and made my own power cable to power the NAOMI. So that's the power, and then the video I've got through the VGA cable. Stereo, I've got RCA cables, but how do you do the controls? Okay, they're USB to either this board, like I said, or this I/O. So because I only have one of these, one of the JAMMA ones, and I've got 2 NAOMIs, well, obviously I have to set up a JVS I/O if I want to run both of them at the same time. Or if I want to keep one, sell one, whatever. So I did. I decided to wire this up to the JAMMA fingerboard. Here I've got the JAMMA fingerboard. I've got ground and 5 volts, and that goes over into the JVS I/O to power the JVS I/O board. Then I've got just some normal JAMMA lines hooked up. I've got player 1 and 2 coin in, player 1 and 2 start, up, down, left, right, buttons 1, 2, 3, 4. Interesting, button 4 does not work on my game, so I've got the extra loom in my Blast City that handles buttons 4, 5, and 6, but they don't terminate in the JAMMA harness. I think they terminate on the board in there. In fact, this is where they terminate, if I remember right. I've got this hooked up for my Dreamcast so I can use those buttons. So I can make a kick harness if I need those buttons, but frankly I don't play fighting games, so there really isn't a need for a 4th button for the NAOMI as far as I'm concerned on my setup. But yeah, I've got test wire and service wire and the player controls and power for the JVS I/O, and it seems to be working fine. I pulled out all of the extra buttons, or excuse me, wires that were in the 60-pin connector here. When I got it, I just bought some used harnesses off eBay that were taken out of cabinets, and it had a whole bunch of these. The yellow wire here is 5-volt output, and I didn't need them, so I left that one in. Like I said, pin 1 to pin 3 is some kind of a loop that it likes to have for functionality, and then I left one 5-volt yellow line in that I routed through the resistor to pin 50 to spoof coin counter 2. Zip tied those together. And then yeah, just player 1, player 2, service, test, coin meter number 1, which actually is in the cabinet. I'll go through there, along with some grounds. I routed all the grounds. There's about 4 grounds there. And yeah, it's not very pretty. I'd like to get a project box for it. I'm not too handy with project boxes, but this is kind of nasty looking right now. But yeah, just a little quick video to show that it works. And if anybody wants to know, yeah, that's how you hook it up. You don't need to give 12 volts to the JVS I/O. It only needs 5 volts, and you can pull that right off your JAMMA harness if your JAMMA harness has power going to it, or you can take the 5 volts from a computer power supply, switcher, whatever you want to. And yeah, and it's working. Of course, it looks like there's no attract mode if you're in free play here, but get the point here.
Okay. 探偵さん、ここは一つ通常業務を返上して正義の味方やりますかね。望むところだ。
So there we go. Proof that it's working, even though the Blast City only has 1 coin meter. So I've successfully spoofed coin meter 2, and I'm running it through the JVS I/O.